The silence in the reception hall was deafening as I stood at the microphone, my hands trembling slightly. 200 pairs of eyes stared at me, some with pity, others with barely concealed contempt. My ex-wife's family had orchestrated this moment, expecting me to crumble. Instead, I pulled out a worn envelope from my jacket pocket. "Before I make this toast," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I'd like to read something." As I unfolded the letter my daughter had written, tears began streaming down faces across the room. By the time I finished speaking, even my former mother-in-law, the woman who had spent years trying to break me, was openly weeping. No one expected what happened next. If you've ever felt underestimated or pushed aside, this story might just give you the courage to stand tall again. Hit that like button if you've ever had to prove someone wrong, and subscribe to hear more stories about ordinary people finding extraordinary strength in impossible situations. My name is Daniel Reeves, and 5 years ago, my life fell apart when my wife of 12 years, Melissa, told me she wanted a divorce. "I've outgrown you," she said, packing her suitcase while I stood frozen in our bedroom doorway. "You were never ambitious enough. My family was right about you all along." Her family, the prestigious Caldwell clan, had never approved of me. I was a high school history teacher who coached Little League on weekends, while they were old money with connections throughout the city. When Melissa and I met in college, she'd been rebelling against her parents' expectations. I was her act of defiance, never meant to be permanent. At least, that's what her mother, Eleanor, reminded me at every holiday dinner for 12 years. The divorce was brutal. Melissa's father, a retired judge, ensured she received primary custody of our 10-year-old daughter, Emma. I was relegated to every other weekend and Wednesday dinners, my child support payments so high I had to move into a tiny one-bedroom apartment and pick up tutoring gigs after school to make ends meet. "Daddy, why is your apartment so small?" Emma asked during her first visit, her innocent question cutting deeper than any insult her grandparents had ever thrown my way. "It's cozy," I told her, forcing a smile. "And it means we get to be closer when you visit." For 2 years, I lived in a fog of exhaustion and grief. The Caldwells made sure to remind Emma of everything she was missing by not living with them full-time. They took her on lavish vacations during my scheduled weekends, accidentally planned exciting events that made my modest outing seem pathetic in comparison. Eleanor, my former mother-in-law, was particularly vicious. "Daniel," she said once when dropping Emma off, glancing around my apartment with thinly veiled disgust, "don't you think Emma deserves better than this?" "Than you?" I nearly broke that day. But then Emma slipped her hand into mine and whispered, "I like it here, Daddy. We make the best pancakes." Those small moments kept me going. While Melissa quickly moved on with Richard, a successful surgeon from another prominent family, I focused on being the best father I could be with the limited time I had. I never missed a school play or soccer game, even when it meant losing tutoring income. I helped with homework over FaceTime calls, created elaborate scavenger hunts in my tiny apartment, and started a tradition of writing Emma letters about the things I admired in her. Then came the invitation. Emma, now 15, delivered it personally during our Wednesday dinner. "Mom's getting married," she said, sliding the cream-colored envelope across the table of the diner where we always ate. "To Richard. They want you to come." I stared at the elegant calligraphy spelling out my name. "Me? Why would they want me there?" Emma shrugged, but something in her eyes made me uneasy. "Grandma Eleanor insisted. She said it would show how civilized everyone is." Mom seemed weird about it, but she didn't argue. Every instinct told me to decline, but Emma's next words changed everything. "I'd like you to be there, Dad. Please." How could I say no to her? So I RSVP'd yes, bought a new suit I couldn't afford, and prepared myself for an uncomfortable day of watching the woman I once loved marry someone else. A week before the wedding, I received another envelope. This one contained a note from Eleanor. "Daniel, we'd be honored if you'd say a few words at the reception." A toast to the happy couple from Melissa's first husband would be such a touching moment. Emma would be so proud. It was a trap. I knew it immediately. Eleanor wanted to parade me in front of her society friends, the failed first husband giving his blessing, reinforcing the narrative that I had never been good enough. She expected me to embarrass myself, to appear bitter or pathetic. I almost called to decline, but then I thought of Emma. She would indeed be proud if I could rise above the pettiness and show grace. But I would do it my way. The wedding was as extravagant as expected, held at the Caldwell's Country Club. I sat in the back during the ceremony, watching Emma in her junior bridesmaid dress, looking so grown up it made my heart ache. Melissa was radiant, and Richard seemed genuinely in love with her. I felt a strange peace watching them exchange vows, realizing that the pain that had once consumed me had faded to a dull memory. At the reception, I was seated at a table far from the main party, with distant relatives who clearly had no idea who I was. Eleanor made a point of stopping by, her smile not reaching her eyes. "We're so looking forward to your toast, Daniel. Right after Richard's best man speaks." She patted my shoulder condescendingly. "Keep it brief, won't you? And appropriate." I nodded, sipping my water and watching the celebration unfold. Emma kept glancing my way, giving me encouraging smiles. She knew what her grandmother was doing, and it broke my heart that she had to witness it. When the time came, the best man gave a rousing speech full of inside jokes and anecdotes about Richard's success. The crowd was warm with laughter and champagne when the wedding planner announced, "And now, a special toast from Melissa's first husband, Daniel." The room quieted immediately, an uncomfortable tension settling over the guests. As I made my way to the microphone, I heard whispers. Eleanor was smiling triumphantly, clearly expecting me to fail spectacularly. That's when I pulled out the envelope, not a prepared speech, but one of the many letters I had written to Emma over the years. This particular one was from 3 years ago, when she was 12 and struggling with her parents' separate lives. "Before I make this toast," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I'd like to read something I wrote to our daughter, Emma, a few years ago." I unfolded the letter and began to read. "My dearest Emma, today you asked me why love sometimes ends, and if that means it was never real. That's such a big question for your 12-year-old heart to carry. Here's what I know to be true: the love that created you was real. It was imperfect, as all human love is, but it was genuine. And while that particular love story didn't have the ending we expected, it gave us the most perfect gift, you. Sometimes people grow in different directions, like trees reaching for different patches of sunlight. That doesn't make either tree wrong or bad. Your mother and I are those trees now, but our roots will always be connected through you. I want you to know that love transforms. The romantic love I once shared with your mother has become something different: respect for her as your mother, gratitude for the years we shared, and hope for her happiness. Because her happiness matters to you, and you matter more to me than any hurt pride or disappointment. Real strength isn't about holding on when you should let go. It's about finding grace in difficult changes and choosing kindness when it would be easier to be bitter. I hope that as you grow, you'll see that in both your parents. We may not be perfect, but we both love you perfectly. So when you see your mom smile with someone new, know that it's okay for you to smile too. Her joy doesn't diminish our bond. And when that day comes when she builds a new life, I'll be cheering for her success, because it means a happy home for you when you're not with me. Love isn't a finite resource, Emma. It multiplies and changes form, but true love never disappears. It just finds new ways to express itself. All my love, always and forever, Dad. As I finished reading, I looked up to see tears streaming down faces throughout the room. Emma was sobbing quietly, her hand clutched in Melissa's, who was also crying. Even Richard looked moved. Eleanor stood frozen, her triumphant smile long gone. I cleared my throat and continued, "So today, I'd like to toast Melissa and Richard. Thank you for making Emma's mother happy. Thank you for creating a loving home for my daughter. Richard, I've seen how you've stepped up as a stepfather, never trying to replace me but adding your own unique bond with Emma. That takes a special kind of man. Melissa, we shared a chapter of life that gave us the greatest gift either of us will ever receive. I will always be grateful for that. I wish you both a lifetime of growth together, of challenges that make you stronger, and love that deepens with time. I raised my glass. To Melissa and Richard. May your roots grow deep and your branches reach high. The silence held for a moment before the room erupted in applause. People were standing, glasses raised high. Emma broke away from her mother and ran to me, throwing her arms around my waist in a fierce hug. I'm so proud of you, Dad, she whispered. Later, as the reception continued, Eleanor approached me, her expression unreadable. That was unexpected, she said stiffly. I'm full of surprises, I replied with a small smile. She hesitated, then said something I never thought I'd hear from her. Perhaps I've misjudged you all these years. It wasn't an apology, but from Eleanor Caldwell, it was revolutionary. The most surprising moment came when Richard sought me out, pulling me aside for a private conversation. I want to thank you, he said earnestly. Not just for that incredible toast, but for setting the tone for how we move forward as a family. Emma needs all of us, and your grace today made it clear that we can do this together. He paused, looking uncomfortable. I also want you to know that I've spoken with Melissa about the custody arrangement. We both agree it's not fair to you or Emma. We'd like to move to a more equal schedule, if you're open to it. I stood there, stunned. I'd like that very much. Melissa joined us, her eyes still red from crying. Daniel, I don't know what to say. That letter was just the truth, I finished for her. I'm sorry, she said quietly. For a lot of things. As the night wound down, I found myself sitting at a table with Emma, both of us eating cake and watching the dancing. You know what, Dad, she said, leaning her head on my shoulder. I think things are going to be different now. How so? I asked. Grandma Eleanor told me she's going to help you find a bigger apartment closer to us. And Mom said I could start spending more time with you. She looked up at me. Your letters saved me, you know. When everything was falling apart, they helped me understand that love doesn't disappear, it just changes. I hugged her close, overwhelmed with emotion. You saved me too, kiddo. In the years that followed, things did indeed change. Eleanor, in her own way, made amends by helping me secure a position teaching history at Emma's private school, a job I never would have gotten without her influence. Melissa and Richard welcomed me into co-parenting decisions, and our custody arrangement evolved to a true 50-50 split. Most surprisingly, Eleanor and I developed a grudging respect that eventually grew into something like friendship. You're still not who I would have chosen for my daughter, she told me once over coffee, but you're exactly the father Emma needs. 5 years after that wedding, Emma graduated as valedictorian of her high school class. In her speech, she talked about resilience and grace, about how families come in all forms, and how love transforms but never truly ends. In the audience, I sat between Melissa and Richard, with Eleanor and her husband beside them, a united front for the young woman we all adored. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't loud or dramatic. Sometimes they're found in quiet moments of dignity, in choosing kindness when bitterness would be easier, in showing up consistently even when it hurts. My triumph wasn't shocking Eleanor's family at a wedding with some grand gesture or cutting remark. It was in staying true to the father I wanted to be, in writing those letters to Emma year after year, in building a life of integrity that eventually spoke for itself. The invitation meant to humiliate me became the catalyst for healing our broken family. Not back to what it was, that was impossible, but forward into something new and, in many ways, stronger. If you're facing your own impossible situation right now, remember this: dignity cannot be taken from you, it can only be surrendered. Choose grace, even when it's hard. Write the letters. Show up. Be consistent. Your victory might not come in a dramatic moment that makes everyone gasp. It might come slowly, in changed hearts and minds, in relationships healed, in the quiet knowledge that you stayed true to your best self when it would have been easier not to. And that, in the end, is the most shocking outcome of all. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe for more tales of everyday courage and unexpected redemption. Remember, the most powerful stories aren't about perfect people, they're about real people finding their way through imperfect circumstances with their humanity intact.